Hello, and welcome to David Factorial reads the story of Klee and his brothers around this relatively campfire-like environment. Ahem. This is the story of Klee and his father, Fe. Fe had 13 sons, who were Clow, Clow, with an AU, Klimt, Cleft, Clack, Clink, and 5 sons, all of whom Fe named Kloppenhomwinwitz, because he could not think of another name until the birth of his last son, Klee. In the Fwa legends are the stories of Fe and his 13 sons. Fe's favorite son was named Klee, meaning, give me more like this one. Fe often had his sons watch the Fwa cattle herd in an attempt to teach them the value of hard work and the responsibility of caring for the herd. Fwa cattle had 3 genders, female, he-male, and 3-male. 3 males had the gender characteristics of all 3 genders. When the females were nursing, they exuded Fwa gherkins from their hide. Fwa gherkins were the staple of the Fwa diet. Klee was the youngest of Fe's sons, yet he was also the most responsible, and he was the only one who listened when Fe spoke to his sons, the legends Feb P had told him. Father and Qatar are regional deity in this universe. The other sons spent most of their time listening to their father's songs, but avoiding work, dreaming of ways to spend their inheritance as soon as their father died. On the other hand, Klee spent his time tending the family herd of Fwa cattle with such care that many thought it was his own herd. It was the largest herd of Fwa cattle in the nation of Fwa, next to the emperor's own herds, and Fe certainly appreciated Klee's care. To show his appreciation, he slaughtered his finest Fwa calf and had the hide made into a fine pair of shorts for Klee. Fe's other sons considered Klee an obstacle to their fun, so they started spending a portion of their time planning ways to get rid of him. When Klee was out herding the Fwa cattle with his brothers, he would often bring back a bad report to his father of how the other sons abused the herd and often secretly sold Fwa gherkins for their own profit. Klee boldly told his brothers that while they were dreaming up ways to avoid work, he was dreaming of being emperor of Fwa. This got on their nerves, and after much plotting, they did finally come up with a plan to get rid of Klee. When he came out to the plains of Choppin to check up on them, they grabbed him and sewed him and his fine shorts to the back of a Fwa bowl. The brothers then traded Klee and the Fwa bowl to some Choppin pops for some stewed pods. They took these back to Fe and explained that Klee had been trampled in a Fwa stampede and that the pods were all that was left of their brother. Fe mourned for 88 years the death of his favorite son, Klee. Meanwhile, the Choppin' Pops, never noticing Klee sewn to the back of their new Fwa bowl, traded it to the Emperor's herdsmen for a pack of Gaza smokes. Now, an emperor likes a clean herd of Fwa cattle, so his herdsmen scrubbed the Fwa cattle daily. While they were scrubbing the new Fwa bowl that Klee was sewn to, they noticed him, crying out and begging to be released. The herdsmen released Klee to the custody of Portenchippa, the emperor's bodyguard. Portenchippa made Klee his butler, and Klee took on the responsibility much as he did with his father's herd of Fwa cattle. Portenchippa was not home much, with all the responsibilities of his own job, but when he was home he did not fail to notice Klee's meticulous care of the house and household manners. He actually did a better job than Portenchippa himself would have done. Portenchippa would have been jealous, but he enjoyed the spare time too much to care. In these days, each time Portenchippa had been out on one of his many trips away from home with the emperor, his wife, Pettenpippa, started making eyes at Klee the way she should only be making eyes at Portenchippa. Klee was no fool. He knew what Petin Pippa was up to, so he warned her with the warning his mother always used. He said, "If you don't stop making eyes like that, they're going to get stuck that way." Petin Pippa could not stand to be rejected, so she kept making eyes at Klee, and sure enough, her eyes got stuck. She lied to Portin Chippa when he came home that night, and told him that Klee had dressed up like Portin Chippa just to get her to make eyes at him. Portin Chippa then beat Klee to within a footspan of his life, and then threw him in jail, as you do. But Qatar, our deity figure, did not forget Klee. Klee once again prospered because of his faithful conduct. After the jailer beat Klee to within a half-foot span of his life, he put Klee in charge of all the prisoners who were in the jail, so that whatever was done there, he was responsible for it. The jailer did not supervise anything under Klee's charge, because whatever Klee did always prospered. Klee often told the other prisoners the stories of Father and Qatar that he had heard as a boy. Then it came about, after these things, that the emperor's nephew offended the emperor by besting him at liver juggling. The emperor was furious with his nephew, so he took away his status as emperor's nephew, gave it to some guy who happened to be walking by, and put his nephew in confinement in the jail, the same place where Klee was imprisoned. And the jailer put Klee in charge of the emperor's former nephew, and he took care of him, and he was in confinement for some time. Then the emperor's ex-nephew, who was confined in jail, had a terrible time sleeping one night. He tossed and turned all night long. When Klee came to him in the morning and observed him, behold, he was downhearted. And he asked the former emperor's nephew, who was with him in confinement in jail, "Why is your face so sad today?" Then the former nephew said to him, "Are you blind? Just look at my hair. I've got bedhead, and there is no one to interpret it." He said this because, in the kingdom of Feb, bedhead interpretations are used to foretell the future. Then Klee said to him, "Do not interpretations belong to Qatar, but let me study your bedhead, please." Then Klee said to him, "This is the interpretation of your bedhead. This afternoon the emperor will restore you to the position of emperor's nephew and have you released from jail. Now please do me a kindness by mentioning me to the emperor and get me out of this jail, for I was in fact kidnapped from the land of Fua'a, and even here I have done nothing wrong that I should be put into jail." That afternoon the emperor declared that his nephew who was in jail should be restored to the position of emperor's nephew. When the emperor was asked what should be done with the guy to whom he, the emperor, had given the nephew status, the emperor said to throw him in jail instead. As you do, the emperor's nephew did not remember Klee, as is tradition. In fact, he forgot him, but Qatar did not forget Klee. Now it happened at the end of 2 full years that the emperor himself woke up one morning with bedhead, and his spirit was troubled, so he sent and called for all the interpreters. And the emperor had them study his bedhead, but there was no one who could interpret it for the emperor. Then the emperor's nephew spoke up, saying, "I would make mention today of my own offenses. The emperor was furious with me, and he put me in confinement in the jail, and I woke up one morning with bedhead. Now a Fua'a youth was there with me, a servant of the jailer, and he studied my bedhead, and he did interpret it for me. And it came about that just as he interpreted for me, so it did happen. I was restored to my status as emperor's nephew." Then the emperor sent and called for Klee, and they hurriedly brought him out of the jail. And when he had shaved himself from head to toe, since that is how one was presented to the emperor in those days, and changed his clothes, he came to the emperor. And the emperor said to Klee, "I presume that you can see I have bedhead, and no one here can interpret it. But I have heard it said about you that when you study a bedhead, you can interpret it." Klee then answered the emperor, saying, "It is not in me. Interpretations of bedhead belong to Qatar." The emperor said to Klee, "Behold, study my bedhead." Now Klee said to the emperor, "A terrible drought is coming. It's going to cause skyrocketing inflation and a shortage of foie gherkins and fep gherkins. Throw the land into a panic, raise prices, and drop interest rates, but not before there is a huge surplus of fep gherkins." Now let the emperor look for a man discerning and wise, and set him over the land of Fep. Let the emperor take action to appoint overseers in charge of the land, and let him extract a fifth of the Fep gherkins of the land of Fep in the time of surplus. Then let them gather all the Fep gherkins of this surplus, and store them, and let them guard it, and let the surplus become as a reserve for the land during the drought, which will occur in the lands of Foix and Fep, so that the land may not perish during skyrocketing inflation. The emperor said, "Wow, all of that was in my bedhead?" Then he said to his servants, "Can you believe a man like this guy Klee?" So the emperor said to Klee, "Since you've got all the answers, you shall be over my house, and according to your command, all my people shall do homage. Only in the throne will I be greater than you. See, I have set you over all the land of Fep." Then the emperor took off his shorts. He had undershorts on underneath, for crying out loud, and put them on Klee. And he had him ride on his second vehicle, and the servants proclaimed before him, "Bow the knee." And he set him over all the land of Fep. Moreover, the emperor said to Klee, "Though I am emperor, yet without your permission no one shall raise his hand or foot or left eyebrow in all the land of Fep." And he gave him Gale, the daughter of a guy he beat in the game of wagon hurling the previous day, to be his wife, I guess. Thus, Klee became prime minister of the neighboring kingdom of Fep. After the period of surplus in Fep, Fez land dried up, and the Foix herds wandered away in a shortage of Foix gherkins, threw the land of Foix into a panic, raising prices and dropping interest rates. The Fe boys, Clow, Cluff, Clow, Klimt, Cleft, Clack, Clink, and 5 sons, all of whom Fe named Kloppen Winwitz, because Fe could not think of another name until the birth of his last son, Klee, were forced to trek out to Fep and trade their prized choppin metal statues for Fep gherkins, dreading the odious Fep aftertaste. The Foix hate Fep gherkins. To them they are dirty. The Foix are so conditioned to despise Fep gherkins that just thinking of the Fep aftertaste causes a physical reaction. Simply seeing a Fep gherkin has been known to cause a Foix to go pale and become woozy. The odor of Fep gherkins sets off the gag reflex. It is common to hear a Foix gentleman say, "I'd rather eat the refuse of my worst enemy than eat Fep gherkins." To which another might respond, "Oh yeah, I'd rather poke myself in the eyes with 6-inch rusty spikes than eat a lousy Fep gherkin." To which another might reply, "Well, I'd rather eat my own head innards after they had been sucked out through my eye sockets by a great naturally occurring vacuum than eat Fep gherkins." Still another might say, "I'd rather a full-body massage from a servant girl named Hela than eat Fep gherkins." To which everyone would respond, "Huh?" If a Foix wants to insult another Foix, a popular saying is, "Your mother eats Fep gherkins." It is considered very naughty behavior for Foix youngsters to even talk about Fep gherkins. The controversial Foix comedian Ludi Kincaid once performed an entire live routine of nothing but Fep gherkin jokes. Of course, it was an adults-only performance and was banned in most towns. All the people of Foix, including Fe and his sons, realized they would have to choke down the Fep gherkins, and most likely vomit a few times after eating the first 3 or 4, or face certain starvation. Now, Klee was the ruler over the land. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land, and Klee's brothers came and bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. When Klee saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he disguised himself to them and spoke to them with cotton in his cheeks. His brothers ordered 12.5 cases of Fep gherkins. Then Klee gave orders to fill the cases with shorts of great value, and thus it was done for them. So the brothers loaded their Foix oxen with the 12.5 cases and departed from there. At the border, Klee had his police stop his brothers. The head police officer said, "May I see your receipt, please?" Clow, the oldest, handed over the receipt to the officer. "Says here you bought 12.5 cases of Fep gherkins. Mind if we take a look inside these here cases?" Clow agreed to let the police search the cases. When these were opened, the police, of course, found the priceless shorts. The brothers were stunned, to say the least. Their hearts sank, and they turned trembling to one another, saying, "What's up with that?" So the police escorted the sons of Feb back to Klee's house. The brothers thought they were done for, but when Klee saw them, he invited them in and fed them delicious snacks prepared with Feb gherkins, of course. While they were eating, after having thrown up only at least twice each, Klee had their cases of Feb gherkins filled with the finest Feb shoelaces, such as only the Emperor's family would wear. After dinner, Klee released his brothers, who still did not recognize him, to go on their way home. At the border, Klee had his police stop his brothers. The head policeman said, "May I see your receipt, please?" Cloud, the eldest, handed over the receipt to the officer. "Says here you bought 12.5 cases of Feb gherkins. And mind if we take a look inside these here cases?" Cloud agreed to let the police search the cases. When they were opened, the police, of course, found the precious shoelaces. The brothers were stunned, to say the least. Their hearts sank, and they turned trembling to one another, saying, "What's up with that?" So the police escorted the sons of Feb back to Klee's house. The brothers thought they were done for, but when Klee saw them, he invited them in and had them join him in the pool. While they were in the sauna, after swimming, he had their cases of Feb gherkins filled with priceless gauges. After they had all dried off, Klee released his brothers, who still did not recognize him, to go on their way home. At the border, Klee had his police stop his brothers. The head policeman said, "May I see your receipt, please?" Cloud, the eldest, handed over the receipt to the officer. "Says here you bought 12.5 cases of Feb gherkins. Mind if we take a look inside these here cases?" Cloud agreed to let the police officers search the cases. When these were opened, the police, of course, found the precious gauges. The brothers were stunned, to say the least. Their hearts sank, and they turned trembling to one another, saying, "What's up with that?" So the police escorted the sons of Feb back to Klee's house. The brothers thought they were done for, but when Klee saw that he had them come in and watch, when Klee saw them, he had them come in and watch a play performed in mime in his private home theater. Then he had them spend the night. While they were sleeping, he had their cases of Feb gherkins filled with humanal-interfetch, which is a lot like food. In the morning, after breakfast, Klee released his brothers, who still did not recognize him, to go on their way home. But Cloud, the smartest brother, said, "Before we go, I'd like to look at these cases of Feb gherkins." When he opened one up, of course he found the humanal interfetch. He exclaimed, "What's up with that?" Klee knew that he had to let his brothers in on his little deception. Klee said, "I'm Klee." And the brothers responded, "Who?" Then Klee took the cotton balls out of his cheeks and told them the whole story. He said, "It goes like this. When I came out of the plains of Choppin to check up on you, you grabbed me and sewed me in my fine shorts to the back of a foie bowl. Then you traded me in the foie bowl to some choppin' pops for some stewed pods. ... Klee's brothers went back to Foie and returned to Feb with their father, Feb, who lived there for only a few years until Qatar eventually smote him with a bolt of energy. In all, the Feb family lived in Feb 410 years. Klee, having become ruler of all the land of Feb, was compelled by his people to change his name to Fei Ni, which means, most of which still do not agree. And that is the story of Klee and his brothers. This has been Story Time Around the Campfire with David Factorial. Thank you for joining me.